If you're going to hear a joke, make sure you stick around for the punchline. Here's your look at McFarlane Toys' DC Multiverse Batman Arkham Asylum, the Joker Titan. An insanely dangerous supervillain, the Joker's white skin, green hair, and blood-red lips belly the chaotic nature underlining his cartoonish appearance. The self-styled clown prince of crime has no superpowers beyond a capacity for incredible violence and a skill at creating deadly mayhem. He frequently concocts elaborate schemes to entrap his arch-nemesis Batman. One of the Joker's most evil schemes involves his use of the Titan formula, a potent toxin he secretly funded to be a successor to the Bane's venom. Once injected with it, the host mutates into a large monstrosity and gains vast strength and durability, which allows the Joker to unleash a horrifying army upon the unsuspecting Gotham City. Always thirsty for power, Joker even injects himself with the formula and transforms into the Joker Titan, but it all proves futile when Batman thwarts the Clown Prince of Crime's plans and stops the chaos from spreading any further. Before we take to looking at the Joker Titan, I suppose it probably would make some sense, after all, to probably figure out how tall the figure stands. As I'm grabbing my ruler right now, just watching where his arms are. Maybe we'll do it on this side. Joker Titan, including, of course, the spikes sticking out from the back of his torso, makes for a figure that's 11 inches in height, or about 28 centimeters tall. Starting some comparisons with a bigger figure first, as we just recently had a look at the Titan-sized Clayface, who at its time seemed like a pretty big figure until you put it next to the likes of Titan Joker, and you realize there's a shadow being cast across Clayface. Titan Joker's that big. Now, of course, we are going to be comparing Jokers. We would want to, of course, bring in the original Arkham Asylum Joker, also released by McFarlane Toys. And then, of course, we'd want to also bring in Batman, a Batman figure that was also released under the DC Multiverse line. On to now the figure's display stand and trading card. Joker Titan comes included with the standard issue DC logo display stand. Psst, with the DC logo branded down below. I know in the review of the Clayface, I had mentioned that these oversized figures should also come included with oversized display stands. And not to backpedal on my original opinion of that, technically Joker Titan has small enough feet, and this is really only going to attach to the back of his heel anyways. I think this size display stand is fine. Clayface, yes, he only just envelops the display stand anyways. He probably could have used a larger one than the one he comes included with, but I think for Joker Titan, this stand is more than enough. Psst. Let's move that to the side. Figure comes also included with a trading card. And once again, we get figure photography here. But I gotta say again, like the coloring that they use for this, giving a nice dark, shadowy kind of presence over top of the Joker Titan. As you can see, this comes for us from Batman Arkham Asylum. If anyone had made it far enough to defeat or even fight against Joker Titan. Rather impressive boss to fight against. And of course on the back, one of the longest read-ups. It was substantial for me to read that at the beginning of the review. It was. It didn't just come out of my head. I just didn't write that down and just read it off. It, in fact, was pulled from the back of the card here. So, yes, you can either pause and read for yourself, or it is the very same read-up I read at the beginning of this video. I'm going to put that to the side. On to now, Joker Titan. I gotta say, one thing that works to his favor is his size. I mean, just again, to put things in perspective, even though we had already brought him in, here's what the normal Joker looked like. If you're going to be calling him Joker Titan, then of course he has to be an oversized figure. And in a case like this, Joker goes to about his abdomen area, so it's a pretty big-sized figure. Even his one leg alone is about the same amount of plastic that they likely used for the Joker body for this figure here. Go ahead and move the figure out of the way here. Picking up Joker Titan and getting a closer look, first of all, at his head sculpt. Part of me is a little on the disappointed side that he doesn't actually have mouth articulation. Granted, yes, it probably would have resulted in breaking up a lot of the sculpting that they put into the big smile that he has on his face from ear to ear. But I think it would have also been nice that they could have incorporated somehow a jaw-articulated point here, where you had been able to open and close Joker Titan's mouth. As seems to be the case with other figures as well, he looks off to the side, so he's never really looking straight at you. It isn't so bad on this side because you can still make out where his eye and his pupil is. But when you look at this eye right here, it's sort of wandering so close to the corner of his eye socket that for a second I had to stop and look at it, thinking initially that the eye wasn't even painted in. It's just really hard to see. I do like the mohawk that they've sculpted on the top of his head. It's got some additional darker green that they've added in there as well. It sort of looks like the top of a swampy moss green area. Like if you're kind of walking through, who walks through swamp areas? You'd have to worry about, of course, of crocodiles and alligators and stuff like that. But of course, the detailing is really nice in this figure. The thing that lacks, I think, a bit in this figure is it doesn't have some additional darker wash. Sure, fine and good is the head sculpt, and fine and good is the rest of the body. But I think what lacks, unfortunately, for this figure is the contrast of colors. The green is nicely added. As you can see, there's some of that additional green that not only makes up the top of his forehead, but also runs across the front of his chest and across the sides of his arms as well, as the veins are running through an entire of his system, pumping that toxin all through his body. The green is nicely added. I appreciate the fact that they would have taken the time to paint that in there. But really, then you get a lot of these areas on his arms, for example, his torso, I might even say his head sculpt too, where there's just a lot of gray plastic. I really think what would have enriched the sculpting of this figure is even just taking a mild amount of black wash, just washing across the surface, is where I really feel you'd get the opportunity to really have a lot of the sculpted features of this figure popping right out. I do like the little gash wounds that they've added to the front of his torso. He's actually got it everywhere on his body. A lot of blood soaking all over his hands, his fingers, and all these protruding spikes that he has sticking out from his forearm. Not to mention as well all the row of ribbed kind of bones sticking out from his body. Again, like when you're looking at these little aspects here, they're softer plastic, sure, but I think there could have also been an opportunity to add a lot of extra paint in there. There's nice paint here at the base of where those spikes are sticking out, but there's really no paint happening here. And I really feel they could have, again, added something extra in there. You need those lighter and darker colors to really allow the sculpting to shine through. Of course, when we get to his lower half, at least he has some extra coloring in there. The more familiar colors of Joker's purple make their appearances here, of course, in ripped pants that would make I would imagine even the Hulk a little envious. He would manage this somehow, which is I always find comical, that he rips out his clothing just by the size of his body, and yet his belt still stays done up. I always found that was kind of funny. It's nicely detailed. I do like the additional woven texturing that they've added to his surface. Not that we want to be spending a lot of time on Joker's behind here, but I do like the additional texturing to it. That's not just a smooth plastic. Got some nice little rips and tears in there where the fabric has given way just as his body is starting to oversize itself. You got some nice little bones sticking out from the fronts of his legs, some nice little gash wounds as well. Not to mention Joker's oversized feet. Again, this all goes really well from a sculpting standpoint, but I feel again like paint is really the thing that this figure almost under-delivers in. The green and the red are nice touches and all, but I really think an opportunity to add some darker colors of black or even like a darker coloring of gray would have really been an opportunity for this figure's sculpting to stand out a lot more than what it currently is. Looking now at the articulation for Joker Titan, as we always do, we're going to start things off first with his head sculpt. I'm going to tilt it to the side so you can see the extreme of how far you can tilt the head. First of all, while it's sort of leveled like this, you can take the head and angle it far back like this. That's as far as it's going to go. You can take the head and have it looking down this far, and while we fix things so it's once again leveled, you can take the head and rock it back and forth. So there's quite a lot of generous articulation that they've put to the head. Still though, I feel like there could have been an opportunity that they could have added lower articulation to the jaw, at least where you've been able to open and close his mouth. The upper torso for Joker is on a ball joint. Not too much the extreme. You really can't. I mean, you can have it looking down. If you want to have him more of a hunchback, then you can bring his torso down. Having it looking up, though, it doesn't go any further past this point. I mean, really, the upper torso ball joint is more there just to allow the torso to rotate back and forth this way. And then there again, your secondary ball joint, just at the base of the abdomen, is really that seems to be doing all the work of getting Joker in those interesting poses. Again, it can rock back and forth this way, up and down this way, and you can also rotate it as well. Taking and looking at the arms come out at a 90-degree angle bend, so it will be the same as well on this side. take the arms, and of course you can rotate them all the way around. As with the case with all the other multiverse figures, there's also that little socketed cup that basically conceals the joint to the shoulder. It doesn't really serve a purpose for articulation. It's more there just to conceal the fact that there's a joint hidden underneath at the shoulder area. The figure doesn't have any elbow swivel. That was completely left off for this figure. The figure, though, does have a double hinge in the elbow, one there and one there. Although, really, when you are bending the elbow, you can get your traditional bend with only the single hinge. Bending the second arm, the problem that you're going to come across is the fact that the forearm and the bicep are so close together that you're really going to have to fight it. And I feel like what will give way long before you start bending the elbow, as this elbow on mine is at least really, really tight, is I feel like there's a risk of this potentially breaking if you force it too quickly. If there's a little bit of resistance, as I certainly have had resistance on this arm, probably going to want to heat that up a little bit before you want to go the full mileage of bending it with both elbow bends. The hands are also on independent hinge joints. Not only do they rotate all the way around, but you can also hinge them back and forth this way. Really nice long fingers on Joker here. Then when you get to the lower half of Joker, the legs split out. I don't know if you can hear it or not. There's a nice little ratchet joint. By the way, the lower torso, I know it's really hard to hear things when this guy just continues to talk. The lower torso, by the way, is a softer plastic that they've used. But yeah, if you stop for a second, guy who's behind the camera, just stop talking for a second. I don't know if you can actually hear that. There is a ratcheted joint on the inside of his thigh. That means his legs are going to stay nice and tight. Especially for the size of this figure, you want to make sure that the legs remain to be tight so that the figure is able to hold his own weight up. The figure's legs go forward and back. The figure does have a double hinge on the knee, which I will say has already started to develop looseness for what little time I've had the figure out of the packaging. It probably was already pretty loose to start off with, and just what little time I've had to have playing around with the figure, I've noticed that his knees have become a little on the more looser side even still. He does have ankle pivots, which is a nice touch. Figure does have also an ankle tilt back and forth, and Joker also has toe articulation as well. Even though technically the figure does come included with a display stand, providing you get his feet leveled and flat, he seems to be fine standing on his own where you don't necessarily need the display stand. That is, again, providing you get the feet leveled or flat. At least enough of his toes are touching the surface, then you shouldn't have Joker having any issues standing upright. So really, even though technically you can't include with a display stand, even though it's still your standard size display stand, I really don't think he actually needs it when it comes to displaying him. It's overall a really nice looking representation of Titan Joker from the Arkham Asylum game. The only thing I think that lacks a little bit on this figure is some much appreciated paint. The green and the red are all nice touches done to his face and his body, but I really think a black wash would have really come handy to allow a lot of the details and features on Joker to stand out a lot more than what they're currently doing right now. For what Joker Titan lacks in paint, at least he picks up the spare in both the sculpting and the size. For a character like Joker Titan being the big beast of a boss that he is, he'd want to be a bigger figure than all the other multiverse figures we've gotten so far. And even just recently looking at that Clayface, who seemed like he was going to be one of the biggest figures we've looked at, gets overshadowed by the size of Joker Titan. Again, he's got some really great sculpt happening for him. The only thing, again, as I said already, and I don't want to beat a dead horse even further, but the figure does really need some additional paint. It reminds me a bit of the Bane that we looked at earlier here on this channel, the DC Multiverse Bane. Decent looking sculpt, but a lot of it gets lost by the fact that they don't add some necessary contrasting darker colors. The brighter fluorescent greens work well here in Joker, as well the blood reds. But if you don't have the darker black washed in there as well, so much of the gray plastic remains feeling unfinished. And I get a lot of that when I'm looking at Joker's legs, his arms, and even to some extent his head. There's some darker grays, sure, that make appearances there, but I would have even toned that down a lot darker than what they did to really allow the features to stand out. All the work that they're putting into these figures in the first place, I really think it's the paint, if anything, that under-delivers in some of these cases. And Joker Titan, I think, is a prime candidate of that. Other than the fact that the paint not being as good as it could be, great looking figure, especially if you're a big fan of Arkham Asylum. This is going to look great on the shelf, a bigger sized figure than the Batman and Joker that we've gotten already. What do you guys think, though, of Joker Titan? Let me know down below in the comments section whether you picked the figure up for yourself or based on this review, what do you guys think of him? And of course, if you are new to this channel, you're enjoying the content that you're seeing, make sure if you haven't already done so to hit the subscribe button down below. Turn on the bell notification and keep your peepers peeled. well, we have certainly wrapped up the review for the Arkham Asylum Joker Titan. There will be more McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse reviews coming your way in the not-so-distant future. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.